Hey, you are listening to another Your Worst song. This is a pretty unique one because I actually spoke to Nat one time originally, but we deemed the technology essentially and the recording itself just not good enough. The benefit, I would say, is we kind of got to know what we did and didn't want to cover or what, and this gave us a chance to be a little more focused in the conversation. It was tons of fun. The first conversation was super fun too. We spoke a lot about the OC and One Tree Hill. They pop up here as well, but that I could have just released that. I mean, that's a whole other podcast though. So I guess with all that to say, please enjoy the episode. If you're enjoying the podcast as a whole, recommend it to your friends if they're in bands, if they're just listeners. I think a lot of people are enjoying the fact that it's a way to be self-deprecating and artists can be seen as so self-serious, which is not true, but they have this other side. So I hope you enjoy it. I hope you check out Nat's Worst Song. And I'm Alex Southey, and you're listening to Your Worst Song.
Thanks for having me.
For the people listening, this is try number two. That we had some technical difficulties. We don't even really know which side they were from, but we deemed it not worth putting out. Is that right?
Yeah, essentially.
Yes.
But it
But
was a great chat. We had
yeah,
a
it
good
was a
chat.
great chat. We can consider it just like it was our opportunity to get to know each other before or something.
100%.
Um,
100%.
I would love to, now knowing a bit more about you, obviously, I can sort of direct the conversation a little more, but I would love to hear about the way growing up in Nova Scotia and that music scenes
hmm
uh, affected you.
Okay. You mean we're not going to just like shoot the shit about the OC for the whole for the
uh,
whole what, like
I'll
20
get into it later. I'll get
minutes?
into it later.
Gotcha. Okay. Yeah, they missed a ringer. It was
They
great.
missed a great one. I could release just that
Um,
as like a clip or something, but
true. We can tease
mhm,
it.
mhm.
All right. Nova Scotia. Yeah, like we're in Nova Scotia right now. We were pretty much based in Toronto and decided this year we would be spending some time here where we're from. We're from me and my partner, we're from Nova Scotia on the South Shore, and we just kind of like housed up in a cute little space that's close to the beach and that we can make as much noise as we want. Currently, we have two drum kits set up here in our living room, and all of our guitars and amps and things are just kind of thrown around. So, just kind of a nice space to be creative and to come home and spend some time with the fam for a bit while we're not super rushed to be on tour and just kind of making the next thing. So, but Nova Scotia is cool. Like I grew up here, obviously. Spent a few years when I was in my college years in Halifax and kind of cut my teeth in the Halifax music scene a bit. And yeah, it's kind of it's very nostalgic to be home. And I always find things to write about here just from being close to the water and driving around a lot and getting up to some stuff when I was just a scrappy teen, you know? So,
Yes. And during our first conversation, I think this is what maybe began to lead us down the avenue of
right,
those CW
right,
shows. You
right.
know, you sort of you if you're writing to nostalgia and you grew up, we realize we're like the same age here, I think. And if you grew up with those shows like the OC or One Tree Hill or Gossip Girl, they all had great music that they would break, for fans on there.
Mhm.
And I think it definitely does affect the way, if you watch those shows enough, it does affect the way you think about song structure and songwriting. And
Totally.
it seems like you and I are both, yeah, very, like I would say, your music also has a bit of that.
I've got a lot of the influences from like especially from watching those shows and the bands that were like those like the 20 to 30 like essential pop rock bands that were huge at the time and that were kind of also cutting their teeth when those shows were coming out and their big opportunities
Yes.
were to be on those shows or in the soundtracks and yeah, like that's kind of like what raised me. So it's sort of like Much Music or MTV, where like that's almost a relic now, where people might not know that same like magic of wanting to be the backdrop to your like,
Yes.
yeah, to your whole, the storylines that they have on there, which are dramas. And like that's essentially what I was doing as a kid, which was just like imitating, like subliminally, like not even realizing that that is what my teenage years were, was just
Uh-huh.
trying to live like Marissa Cooper on the OC,
Yeah.
something super
Welcome to Halifax, bitch.
exactly. Oh my God,
Yeah.
literally, exactly. Truly. So it's like, yeah, that was like a thing. And the bands again, like it was cool to see, like I think we talked about this too. It was like the Killers were appearing at the bait shop on the OC, or like a bandstand. They had them in the in One Tree Hill as well. It was like the
Was the
band
one in One Tree Hill?
fun. Uh it was like a coffee shop slash like venue. I just know,
Yes.
yeah, they had a few artists on there, like Jimmy Eat World and
Gavin
yeah,
DeGraw, because he did the
of
show.
course,
Yeah.
100%. Yes.
Is that
Yeah.
where Peyton, who was the blonde curly haired one? Yeah, she worked at a coffee shop.
Yes, and she was gonna be like she's gonna have a record label or something. Like,
Yes. But I know what you're saying, because all of these shows basically, not only is it great indie rock music, what we would probably call pop rock or indie rock now, it was
totally.
cinematic. It worked under or over a TV show. And I think that
Exactly.
that's a quality that's included in your music.
Thank you.
Yeah, well, another aspect of the conversation that we had last time, a big aspect of it was sort of you coming to grips with maybe that your audience's perception of you is a little bit different from how you perceive your own music and yourself and putting it
Totally.
out.
Exactly.
Um, so I'm very sorry to cut you off. So I'm very curious if if it's something you realized more recently, or if it's always been something that you're like
Mm.
contending with.
Definitely. Like I think like hindsight for sure.
Mhm.
And especially being where we are now in our age, like it's like spending your 20s really getting in there and just playing ball, and then now being able to be like looking back and forward, being like, well, what am I doing now, and what's my best way of like fulfilling that? Because yeah, my biggest thing too, like in on that 2000s vein, was like it was the fact that my whole upbringing had been surrounded by these bands and this culture that was predominantly male bands, but the females at the time were still like reaching that same sound and like that same caliber of like releases, which was like
Mhm.
um, always kind of in a more raw or organic sound, like full band sound, and
Mhm.
the Kelly Clarksons, the Ashley Simpsons, the Avril Lavignes, all of that sound was there. Whereas like once I hit my 20s, there was a shift in the industry and a shift in music, and it was suddenly like, oh, I'm trying to make a record in the 2000s, like early 2000s, the aughts, right? Like, and
Mhm.
it just became a little muddy because the perception of me was this young 20-year-old girl, and
Mhm.
I think that just kind of blurred the lines a little bit, especially when it came to me walking into rooms and working with producers and having those conversations, because I was just very naive in the sense where I thought I was getting what I wanted to get across. And I just always had that perspective of myself, having known what I wanted and like knowing my whole story,
Mhm.
versus what a person that doesn't know anything about you, and it's like everybody's working together and wanting to see talent or whatever you have succeed. So everybody's got like good intentions and they want to like help and do something in a way, but they also have an agenda in their own creative path. So that's the struggle with like what I felt, at least growing up. And I've scrapped a lot of records that I've made, and done a lot of different writing sessions and things like that, co-writing versus by myself, and just kind of been establishing what it is I like and what it is I don't like. And God knows tomorrow maybe I'll totally fucking change my mind, but like just where I'm at today and like looking back at my catalog and where I'm going, I just kind of feel that it's an interesting perspective that I think people have had, or people might have, on my catalog. And but beneath the surface, there's all this stuff that came with it, right?
Absolutely. I have two things sort of to say about that. I think one is, once you hit 20, like you were saying, and the industry sort of moved on,
Mm-hmm.
it's a bigger thing of the industry moved on from having rock or rock
Mhm.
influenced pop from being the main thing. That used to be what pop was. And now it's like,
Exactly.
synths and whatever you'd call it.
Exactly.
Computer music. The other thing though that we didn't actually get to talk about in the first conversation, but I was wondering about it, and now after seeing a friend's post who brought it up, I think it's a good time to bring it up, and it relates to what you're talking about. So
Totally.
this perception of you when you're coming in as a 20-year-old girl, as you said,
Mhm.
and especially like everybody knows, especially not just on the artist side, but like the music engineering and
Yes.
that
Yes.
kind of side, it's heavily skewed male, right?
Yes.
Um, I want, so what happened to my friend was she put up a clip of her playing a solo on guitar, but she happened to be wearing clothing where uh, it was somewhat revealing looking, right?
Yeah.
And all of the comments, or a lot of the comments, were more about her body than about the
Mm.
guitar playing. And so I'm wondering if that's a little bit of what you're getting at, where maybe people just see like, okay, you're a cute young 20-year-old
Mm.
girl, and we're gonna, yeah, you brought
Tunnel
us the
vision.
song, but
Yeah.
we're
Yeah.
gonna take it from here. Is that sort of how what you're getting at?
That's an interesting thing. I think we have the same friend. I think I saw this.
Mm. I don't want to put their name on, but
No, no, no,
yeah,
absolutely.
exactly.
Love her and yeah, fuck them. No.
Hmm.
I have this battle with this soft girl persona that everybody kind of pins on me because I'm nice or because I'm like I don't want to be a dick because who the fuck wants to deal with somebody that's an asshole 24/7. So sometimes I feel I'm like selectively passive in a situation to be um maybe more agreeable or more outgoing. And when you're in situations that are really tough, especially as a woman, like it's just, and you have those other things, which is the cliche, like you're a bitch, you're this and that. But also just in general, like I don't know if as many guys are in those situations where you do have to kind of decide on in a split second how best to go ahead with something like that, whether you're going to be nice or not nice, or and what that means. So for me, if I was being nice, it's like you give an inch, then they take a mile, because then suddenly you're getting walked all over. And trying to
Hmm.
come back from that is really hard, which is why I think a lot of women have stronger personalities in this industry, because how else do you
Hmm.
survive? It's just, and sometimes it's just not worth the energy, like it's exhausting to try and fight for everything every day. And I think that's one of those things that like in my catalog, really like tying it back into the music that I've made, has been kind of more of the um it's like a mark on me, and it's hard for me to listen to some of the things I've released it, because I can hear that in it, where I'm like, you can hear that that was something that um I felt more passive. I
No,
felt less like
yeah,
the
yeah,
driver, and that's very frustrating for me as an artist and as a person. So yeah.
absolutely. Is that uh okay, so first of all, I hope you don't mind that I brought that up and that I
Love it.
made
No,
okay, okay, cool. I want it to be like,
this
it's
is
a
exactly
weird
why
topic
I'm
to talk
here.
about.
No,
Okay.
I'm here for this. That's like when I saw your like name for the podcast, and I thought that is kind of so on brand for me because of where I am and what I'm about to like create versus what I've made. So thank you for having me, and I'm super stoked to talk about it. So let's definitely dive in.
Oh, good. Okay. Well, good. Yeah, and thank you. Yeah, thank you for being willing to talk about it as well, because it's something that I obviously I have thoughts about it from the outside, but I have no idea how it feels to be a woman going through the same things, like you just said about having to make those second decisions. I
Mhm.
think probably anybody in this industry has to, but I think there are specific decisions that are forced upon women in the industry that men don't have to deal with, for sure. Like specifically about how you're going to be perceived in a will they walk all over me kind of
And
automatically kind
I
of
don't know
way.
about guys. Like again, I don't know, maybe like because I can't speak for anybody but myself, but I also know that like I hold it differently. And I don't know if a lot of women do that, but I hold what I've done differently. We're holding on to what we've said and how it happened or whatever. And it's just so like consuming. And yeah, it's because I think we don't get as much practice being heard, or our voice might be the quietest in the room sometimes. So once we do get a shot, it's like it's intense, like we can
Right.
hold on to those things differently. At least that's what I've experienced in my era. And I also grew up before the Me Too. Like when I started making records, I remember the Me Too thing came out, and it was a few years when I was in college. And
Mhm.
the difference of how I was treated the year after that versus like when I was the like one girl in a class of like 18 guys. And I feel like
Hmm.
that with women, like especially like I just didn't have as much of the like camaraderie or like comfort level. Like
So basically, what you're
yeah,
saying is you understand, or you think this, and I agree with you. Women are more often scrutinized for everything they say, so you need to
totally.
think more about what you're saying, whereas men, on average, can just kind of
Yeah,
let go.
totally.
Okay, I
It's
see, I
it's more
see.
relaxed, I think. And again, that's like you said, based on our bodies, based on our like that's such a thing. Like it's harder for us to let go and feel completely comfortable and as we also know safe. So
Yeah, it's unfortunate, but
yeah,
it makes sense what you're saying. Like, it's good that you're being honest about it because why sugarcoat? What does that help?
like I felt more um like vulnerable and like in hard situations when it comes to like when creatively. Like
Hmm.
that's been the thing that I've felt most vulnerable at. And like I said, I do think like um my personality or whatever it is, like uh I've gone through the phases of thinking I handled this situation one way, so the next time I'm in it, I'm going to handle it this way. When there is never going to be the exact same situation twice, so it's very hard because you can never really navigate the best way to do something, especially when you're basing it on like sort of like a trauma response or something that I
Hmm.
like. So basically, when it comes to getting in a studio and working with somebody, the biggest thing, and you know, as an artist, it's like you have to prove so much that you're worth their time or worth anybody's investment because it does feel like now there's a dime a dozen. So you have to be able to like stand out or prove something right off the bat. And yeah, being like 20 something or whatever. And it's like I think people always saw that I was talented or that I was whatever. And
Hmm.
wanted to get in there and help. It was very detrimental because at the end of the day, like, and I think about this for most younger or new artists, is that's the best time in your life to just be like fucking around, trying everything, not listening to what anybody has to say, just doing you. And I was in the position where early on it started to feel like people were in there and I
Hmm.
you're
You
you
don't learn what your own taste is,
100%. And like, so
right?
what I feel like is now here we are talking about the 2000s and shit. And it feels like I was on this big ride for a while, just doing this stuff. And I probably learned a lot and like grown a lot, but also it's like, it's kind of fucked me up a lot. And it just, I'm back to where I started and I just still haven't gotten to do that one thing that when I was 20 and I walked into that first room with like somebody trying to make a record that I still never got to do. And I still need to get that out. You can't like bury creative energy. Like if you need to make something, you can't just put it away and never do it. Like I think if you really need to make something like so,
You can't bury creative energy. I love that. That's great. That might be the pull quote for
hey,
this episode. Uh, well, this relates to everything we've talked about, kind of sets us up for the first question, which is uh, what's a worst performance memory?
I've been doing some touring from the time I was just a kiddo, just around the Maritimes and things. But I was talking to you about the show I played where there was like girls fighting in the middle of the dance floor and like
Yes.
hair on the floor when we left. We were like, oh my God. But I was gonna tell you another one because
Perfect.
honestly
Okay.
I can pull forever. Like we got lots of good, we got lots of bad. The time that my guitar exploded and it was just this very interesting.
Exploded.
Yeah, and it's a little bit more recent than like that one that I pulled out. This
Okay.
was like a year ago, and we
Damn.
had a tour in the UK. It was our first time getting over there, and we had a little, indie run, just like 5 or 6 dates, and we were doing local bills. And the last show was in London, and we had our friends in Mating Ritual. They were headlining, so we got to do this show at the Grace, and it was a great night. And that venue is really cool. It's beautiful. It's like the whole ceiling's filled with disco balls. It's like
Wow,
beautiful.
cool.
It was sick. And yeah, all tour. And I don't know if it was the plane, like maybe just like flying with my guitar, something might have fucked it up a little. But all of
Mhm.
those dates leading up to it, there was something kind of off about my guitar. And I was just, making the best of it. And it's so indie. We're so rugged. We're just like throwing our shit in our backpacks and like one carry on, you're good to go. And
Yeah.
yeah, we just every show we were just like praying that everything like gear wise was just gonna be safe. And then there was like one night something totally busted on Ryan's rig, like his playback rig, and we had to go to some place, like random place in a taxi and buy the new interface to work. Or like we put a thing out on like Facebook being like anybody locally so it's like we were really in that space. It was very funny. But
Damn. Sorry to stop just for 2
Right.
seconds. Let's tell the people what a playback interface is.
Yeah, well, we have some tracks like we throw, especially when we're on the road, just the two of us to try and like make do for keeping it on the cheap. And it's we had just I can't remember what we had before we had to replace it.
But it's basically just like when he's on drums,
interface. Yeah.
you can hit a thing and that will set off what
Triggers.
sounds like other musicians there or whatever.
100%. So like our bass, we would have like a bass player. That's about the most important. And then since we do have like a lot of recorded material, it just kind of helps everything like mold together and sound more like the recording. So I can do whatever I want on guitar and have the fun that I have on stage, and then Ryan's on the drums and whatever. But I think he has just like his laptop through like an interface, and he has like 3 tracks. But anyway, so we had a whole funny couple of shows before, but then this very last show, which was the big show, it was like sold out, and we were so excited about it. And we had like agents there, and classic, like you've got everybody coming out to the big end of the show, or like the big end of the tour. And it was like classic, my patch cable, like the little patches on my pedal board, something didn't work. So halfway through the set, I yanked my cable out and like shoved it into the guitar, which was a bit of a nightmare. You're like, what the fuck's happening? And then you're fine. It's like, whatever, it's fine. That's nothing. And then my pickup in my guitar, like the actual pickup, like I was playing the Strat or whatever, and it just like, it came unscrewed. And every time,
oh my God.
Yeah. And every time I move, because I'm a very
active player.
Yeah. So every time I moved, you'd hear this like clinking, and it was like, what the fuck is happening? And that I couldn't identify while I was playing. I was just in the middle of it. So I was like, well, whatever. Anyway, but the very last song, it was like the end of the night last song. And I'm always a little bit messy and rowdy on stage with like how I treat my instruments. Like my guitars, I've given them a little bit of road wear. But I didn't do anything crazy. Like I'll hit the cymbal a little or whatever. But at the end of the show, the last song, I like put my guitar on the ground, like kind of normally, maybe a little bit like drop. And then, I head towards like the side stage or whatever. I'm heading off the stage anyway. And then I looked back, and it exploded. So the pieces of my neck were just like all sprawled out, and I was like, the strings were flying up. I was like, how did that happen? So that was pretty fucked up, and it was funny. It was a good finale but pretty sad. I was pretty bummed out. I was like, what the fuck? That's
sad, but if that's end of the show, end of the tour, that's kind of a cool way to end it.
No, I think it was perfect. It was just like that guitar was giving me grief the whole tour. So I was like, you know what? Fuck you.
So basically what happened, I know you have a photographer at a lot of your gigs, or I see new photos. So was there anybody filming that or taking a photo or anything?
That was other thing. I think somebody did take a picture of like, the debris on.
You could have been doing the Jimi Hendrix fire guitar kind of thing.
It's just so funny because like I've heard from friends who smash guitars, like they actually like go crazy, like they're doing
like Nirvana style kind of thing.
Exactly. I've heard how hard it is, right? And I'm like, oh my gosh, like, yeah, it's so hard. I'm so weak. And I remember once I bought like a guitar off Kijiji, and I was playing this show, and the show actually really pissed me off too. God, I could keep going. But anyway, so I at the end of the show, I was like, yeah, I'm gonna just do it. I'm gonna get this little Squire up here. It was like $200, and I'm gonna try and smash it, like just for fun. And I think I did one cool axe like hit, and it bounced because it was like a classic festival or something. I was like, this is not the stage to try and do this.
That's hilarious.
It was so dumb, and I was like, I just give up. But but then it was like every other guitar that I'm barely doing anything to. I can't believe how fragile they are, and like it's just me and Strats. I'm never playing like any. Squires are tough, Tellys are tough, but Strats are not it for me. Love them.
So
gentle.
Wait, what's your main guitar that you play? I thought you said Strat though.
I kind of go all over. Like I have,
but it's Fender.
It's I started out. I'm lucky. Like I fucking love guitars, of course.
Yeah.
But I started doing most of my big shows because I was in college, and I invested in like a Gibson 339, and I paid it off for like 5 years.
Invest is right. Jesus Christ.
Yeah, I know. And like that was before I was as rowdy.
I've got the inside scoop on an upcoming Dateline episode. Who does it feature? One of Nelly's face band-aids. Where did they go? Who are they with? Whose face are they canoodling? Find out this week. And now the music is kind of sounding a little bit more like People's the Diamond Store. Are you in trouble with your partner? Get them some jewelry, they'll love it. People's.
It was so dumb, and I was like, I just gave up. But then there's like every other guitar that I'm barely doing anything to. I can't believe how fragile they are, and like it's just me and Strats. I'm never playing like any. Yeah, Squires are tough, Tellys are tough, but yeah, Strats are not it for me. Love them.
So
gentle.
Wait, what's your main guitar that you play? I thought you said Strat though.
I kind of go all over. Like I have,
but it's Fender.
It's well, I started out. I'm lucky. Like I fucking love guitars, of course.
Yeah.
But I started doing most of my big shows because I was in college, and I invested in like a Gibson 339, and I paid it off for like 5 years.
Invest is right. Jesus Christ.
Yeah, I know. And like that was before I was as rowdy, maybe because I treated that thing like gold. I just didn't want it to get damaged. But it was like also it's a hollow body, so it's a very different sound.
Mm-hmm.
And one of my friends was just like, yeah, Telly is the way to go if you're like fucking around on stage. So that was what I started playing. But Strats are really beautiful. I'm a huge geek about stuff, and again, I'm a girly girl, so I'm a geek, but I'm also like the aesthetic. Like I just want something pretty. I'm like,
absolutely.
Give me the pretty cool rock and roll guitar that like Courtney Love wore
yes,
wears her dress with. And it's like your outfits. I want to have a different cool fucking guitar for every outfit.
I think guys think the exact same fucking thing.
It's nothing about sound. It's nothing about sound. Like I don't care if it sounds like shit. I just want it to look cool as fuck.
Totally. I think anybody who says that's not a factor, maybe it's not the biggest factor, but anybody who says that's not a factor is fucking lying.
Yeah, they are lying. Fuck you, everybody.
Fuck those people. Fuck everybody listening.
Yeah.
Well, let's flip it then. I know you said you could go off on some more interviews, and hey, if we have an issue with this one, we'll do a third version, and you can tell the new story.
Thank you.
But best gig. I'm so curious to hear if you got that.
Best gig, and again, if we're gonna keep it in the same vein, do we keep it? Because I can talk about Lala, and that was the coolest thing I've ever gotten to do. Amazing.
Why you want to give like a quick description of Lollapalooza, and then
sure.
You can move on to something.
It was just super sick, and like we had the early slot, and obviously when you get an opportunity like that, regardless of where we're at in our career, it's like it's a no-brainer. So
remind me where it is in the US.
So it's in Chicago, and
Chicago. Wow, okay.
We had the stage, it was like right across from the big stage, so we were like still a main stage. It was like Sabrina Carpenter and a few other cool whatever bands from Peach. What's that one? Peach Pit.
Yeah,
Pit was the other one. Yeah, Peach Pit was the other one on that night.
That's cool.
And so it was very cool. We got to like see some cool acts on that stage, and then across from it was like Fred again and Billie Eilish and all these really sick acts. The 1975. So we had a really great time, and we got to go obviously like to the festival and hang. But I had never.
It's very weird to me that Sabrina Carpenter would be on the same stage as
right.
The other person you just said.
Peach Pit, yeah, they were side by side.
Yeah, Peach Pit, yeah.
At the same time, yeah.
Huh.
It was pretty interesting, and we literally just got to like run around the festival and have a really good time, and then we got to play on the Friday or Saturday, whatever it was, and we had good weather, and I think we kicked it off that morning or afternoon or whatever it was, and we still got quite a good turnout. Like that was the thing, is when you have like, we're in like a sweet spot where like we really just like a win's a win, and take every opportunity you get, and just enjoy it. So there was zero pressure, and those kinds of shows are like that, where it's a festival, so everybody's there for a good time, and there's no confusion. Like if you're there, you're here to see music. You're not going to be disappointed with
That's a good point.
Show. So it's just putting on a good show and having fun. So there was a little pressure, very good vibes, and I had the best time. And like playing festival stages is always really, really cool. But I had never seen or been to a festival at that caliber, and like there isn't like anything like that in Nova Scotia or the Maritimes to compare it to. So I had never been or seen a show like that before. So getting to play one my first time was very, very crazy. And
in the US, and it's like a historic festival, I
Yes.
would say.
Oh yeah,
Yeah,
exactly. Something like, yeah, we all knew that name for years, and it was like, yeah, it was insane. So we're really, really
exactly.
stoked. Yeah.
That's awesome. Well, thanks for telling me about that. So just getting back to what we were doing, what was the news story that you had about best performance?
Sure. Okay. I was gonna say that it was really funny because we just did this tour uh in the States with a band called Giant Rooks. And we did just a couple dates on the West Coast ish.
Giant Rook, as in like the chess piece?
Yeah, exactly.
Oh,
Yeah.
oh, okay, okay,
And they're
cool.
from, I think, Germany. So, but
Hmm.
they're doing super well in North America. And this was one of their biggest tours ever over here. So we've done a few, we did actually right on our way to Lala, we did a couple shows with them and they were also heading to Lala. So we did like the Danforth and the Shelter, I think, in
That's
Detroit.
awesome.
And so we knew them a bit. We got to do the next little tour with them on the end of their North American run. And we had done a show that like the day or two before in LA, and then we were starting this tour. And the show that we had booked, it was so last minute, we just kind of like threw it together for like friends and fans, and then some industry we wanted to get out. And
Hmm.
it was like a Monday night in the middle of Silver Lake, and we were like, you know, feeling it. We were like, okay. But when you get to go right after that, like immediately and open for a band that has like 700 fans lined up outside and literally the best people ever, like just everybody was so good. The venue was so sweet. And we really met that high that first night. So it was so funny because then the rest of the shows we kept being like,
Chasing
and
it?
well, we were like, they're exactly the same. And arguably, we probably sounded tighter or we,
Hmm.
you know, got our road wearing and like got better as a band. But it was just funny because we still just felt like there was something special about San Diego. Sorry, that was where it was. It was in San Diego.
That's
And
fucking sick.
yeah, it was. And then I remember somebody came up to me after the show in like Phoenix or something, and they were like a fan and they were like, oh my God, how's the tour been going? Like, what was your favorite show so far? And like, you know, that they probably wanted me to say Phoenix because they were in Phoenix and that's where it was. And I
Uh,
was like, San Diego, like a fucking idiot. Like I was just like, and then I was like, oh no, but here was great too. Cause I just
yeah,
like,
yeah,
what
yeah.
I'm saying, but no,
I
but the
love that
whole,
they asked like with big
it was,
anime eyes, and
it
you're
really
like, oh,
was.
different city, different
No,
city. Yeah,
for real. It was just like that. And I was like, damn, I'm thick. But yeah, no, they were such
yeah.
sweeties. And we met so many great people. And that was the other thing is like 10 out of 10 for the amount of fans and friends we met. And it felt like for the first time I really got to meet my people and like
Hmm,
perform for my audience because they really just got it. And like whatever we were doing and they were doing, everybody just got it. And like that's such a rarity, especially opening, because sometimes it can be a slog. Like you get these great shows and you get to play for the built-in audience, but they're not really there for you or they're just holding their spot
totally.
for the front. But no, everybody was super cool and I'm just super stoked that we got to do that.
Wow. Well, those are all the ingredients that make a good show, right? It's like audience, the way you performed, energy,
The
uh,
venues were
the
sick.
venue.
Venues
Yeah,
were sick.
exactly.
Yeah.
Wow, that sounds
10
fantastic.
out of 10.
I want to ask just quickly about Danforth because that's everybody listening will know Danforth Music Hall. What was it like to play there? Can you remind me, did you
Totally.
headline or who headlined or what was the,
Definitely not us.
well, I don't know.
They headlined. Yeah, yeah. No, they headlined and that was our first night getting to do that what was last year's run or whatever, 2023.
Because
And
that's got to be cool. Was that the first time that you played it?
yeah, I think it was. And
Yeah, yeah.
again, yeah, like legendary venue that we've always been excited about. And that's the case where like it's cool because that's a venue that I would have gone to a bunch of shows for. So I did have that preconceived idea of how cool it was. And so
Right.
being on that stage, it just felt like, you know, very special because yeah, it was like this very beautiful room and tons of people were there and excited and yeah, like
And
kind of
it's like physical growth. It's like you spent most of your time look in the audience and now you're looking at the
exactly.
audience. That's wild.
It was
Uh,
crazy. Yeah. I'm very, very stoked that we've had these opportunities, you know.
yeah, it sounds like you've had a bunch of great gigs, bunch of best gigs.
We're definitely live first. Like we always feel that way. So regardless of our catalog and what we've had recorded, I feel like that's where people really connect or like we can really sell what we do. And it's always that moment of if I've ever had conversations, it's like I cannot put this on a boardroom and express it to you. Like you need to come to the show and understand it because that's just the best way and the only way to really because that is our place. Like that's where like I'm way more comfortable doing a show than I am doing even like this. Like this is very much nerd. Like I'm just too neurotic and stressed out. But like doing the shows, it's like that is your stage. It's like inviting somebody over to your house. It's like this is my house. I'm comfortable on it, and you guys are here. And yeah, it's
That's a good attitude to have. I don't know how many people feel. It seems like musicians, there's sort of two types. It's like the live musician or the little Brian Wilson studio kind of obsessive. And if anybody has even barely been following you or looking at the photos or barely been following this conversation, they're gonna know they need to see you live, because think about the guitar explosion. Think about how active you say you are with the guitar and all that stuff. Like, it's worth seeing you, you know?
Sick. Thank you.
Of course. So with the next question, I think this maybe directly relates to your best shows, because presumably you play what you're about to answer. What do you think is your best song that you've released?
I think our best one would be on the more recent release. It was The Nighttime Is on the Timing. That record, I just in a whole is one of the few on my catalog that I really feel like connected the most to me and like what we do as a band, because it has those elements of like what we said, the 2000s like rock, 90s rock with the like bits of pop. Like that was always kind of the hope, was to like give pop a place in what we do, but never like the front or like the focal point. Like that was never the point, like for what I was doing. So, but again, that record's such a thing for me as a whole, and it was really a saving grace for me. And with that, I always find that my favorite song on the record and to play live is January, because it's one of the ones that just kind of surprised, I think, all of us. Like we didn't know we were going to put it on the record. It's the last one to make the cut, and we had been like just prepping to go to the studio like the night before, and we were in the rehearsal space just prepping the songs. And it was like I could see all the ones in front of me and picking and choosing from what I wanted to put in and record, and take to our producers who were in Minnesota, which is where we were flying, and they're in a band called Now, which we had looked up to. So it was like getting to meet our heroes and like work on this project with them. And we'd like done a lot of prep before we went. And I could just really see there was like something I wanted to get out, and it needed to like, it was like the summary of this body of work before it was even made. It was like, yeah, like that, you know what I'm trying to say? It's like,
I do. It's like the distillation of everything that you associate with your music and yourself. It's the best representation of that.
Yes. And it was like I could feel what was needing to be put on there to be like the cherry on top. So that was the last song to make it on the record. And it was just a vibe where I was just playing a progression that I like, a chord progression on the guitar for a long time. And I had like just simple things that I knew I wanted to do with it. And it's, again, sometimes I like doing things without a lot of thought. I think I'm a much more like, just do it and not think
instinctual.
Instinctual. And like that always feels like the most free and the best representation of something, versus like the pressure that gets built up from whatever conversations that go on behind the scenes and all the years of things we've talked about. So having that moment where it was just like, I'm just going to write this song and we're just going to put it on the record. And I didn't have a demo. I didn't have it all mapped out, but luckily working with those guys, they could get the assignment as well. Like we all just knew collectively, like between me and Ryan and then Casey and Brad, who worked on the record, and me bringing in this little voice note.
Those are the guys from Now?
Yes, those are the producers that we worked with, and they're artists too. So, and they had I had huge conversations with them before I went in, which was kind of like, I'm coming from a place of feeling this way about my catalog, trying to get there, and they just like, they really knew where I was coming from. And then January was written, and it was basically like a 20-minute voice note of just the freestyling over these chords, and just sort of cut it up and chose my favorite parts from it and made this song. But it's also kind of solidified a lot for me, where whenever I start those chords or whenever I play that song live, like I can always see somebody in the crowd or whoever who has definitely never heard that song before feeling it or like getting it
the best.
Yeah, and that's really interesting. So it's connected to me in a big way, and I think it's easy to connect to other people. And yeah, it's sort of a remnant of like Third Eye Blind or Smashing Pumpkins or Jimmy Eat World, like those kinds of ballads, but it's really messy too. And that's the other thing that I really like about it, is it's not like, it doesn't need to be perfect. And that was my ode to that on the record, which was my biggest, like, I needed to get that out. I needed to get the fuck you out in that song in a way.
That's so interesting though that it's the song, it's the last song that you made for the record, and yet if I'm correct, it's the song you feel most like finally you achieved what you wanted to do. So it's so interesting. It's the last song and not the first or the first few that guides the rest.
And like, again, after expressing to you all of my kind of beginnings of having that place where there are people involved, where it's not just me and my music, and it's just like there's so much outside stuff happening that it gets very neurotic, because I'm still at that place where it's like you got to prove what your worth is, and it's really it's a lot. And I'd already gotten that all out of the way, because I knew where we were going to record. I knew I had a safe place. I knew all those different things were fine, so there was no stress on that, and so I could just sit there and be with my music for the first time ever. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's
absolutely
just,
and that's how it needs to be.
That is the dream. And that's the thing that artists nowadays don't really get. I don't think ever. Like, I don't think anybody can just feel that same, and maybe they never could, but I just always pictured back in the day, right? Like, and it's sort of that idea too, where people's first records are always the ones that people really connect with. And it just makes sense to me, because it's like, well, yeah, obviously, because no one was in their fucking ear making them feel like shit about it or trying to get them to do something a certain way. So
that's a good point. I hadn't actually heard that answer. I'd heard the reason that first debut albums are sometimes so good is because you've had your whole life to write the first album, air quotes.
Right. Yeah. See, I don't even buy that either. It's like, I think it's just that once you get that machine going, there is just way more behind it, and you have to be, like I said,
to answer for other people's interests.
Period. And you've got a new, like, it's not it, and then it becomes less about like the anxiety of the industry, but then it's also about the people that you love and like your fans. And you know, because once you make connections with your fans too, like I've got a fan base that I only get to connect with on like the live front more than I do on like social things like that. But when you meet them and you're like, this person's holding this thing that I've made in a place that I'm holding it, so I don't want to let them down either. Like, and yeah,
it's a good attitude.
It's crazy. Yeah, it's just crazy. There's so many different factors. So yeah, I think the safest and most pure place, I think, is just when you are with like, you just can be with yourself and just make your own music without the bullshit. But the bullshit's also what makes this shit work. So there you go.
Well, final question. I'm very curious what you're going to choose, and if it's the same one as we originally chose, because now after this whole conversation, after these two conversations, I feel like I certainly have far more of an idea of, you know, you and your career and the different music that you have made that you relate to or don't relate to anymore. And obviously I have to listen to these episodes a few times when I'm editing and recording. So that meant that I heard your air quotes worst song many times. And first of all, I don't think it's a bad song. It's a good song, but I do, after listening to it more and more and more, totally agree. It doesn't scream you.
Thank you.
That's really what it is. It's not a bad song. It just doesn't, it now seems like a little bit of an outlier in your discography, the way you're wanting to set it up.
Thank you. I thought you were going to make a joke, because when we were doing the last one and when I came to realize that you have to play that song,
you were very nervous.
I was not okay with it, and I was ready to like, yeah. So I was like, you're probably going to be like, yeah, now that you know that we're going to put this song at the end of this track, did your idea change of what your worst song is?
Well,
I
that
fucked
too.
Myself in the last interview, and obviously couldn't go back. But
for those listening, Nat was very, very hesitant about agreeing to the song.
Yeah, yes, I'm good with it. We're going to do it, because it is like, this is the other thing that is so funny, is I've been dying to talk about it for a minute as well, because it's the song that, and as I said, it's like somebody is vexing me by keeping this on their playlist, and it's up, because it's like the Spotify thing. The algorithm puts whatever your top listened to songs are, not based on your streams, but based on whatever's still being most active in your catalog. So
I didn't know that. Okay, that's how it works.
So
I see.
It's got nothing to do with the streams on that one, because I don't have a whole lot of stream. Like, it's not a huge stream count on that one. compared to some of the other ones. But it's just so funny because somebody has that. So if I look and see like what's going on, it's like this had streams yesterday and yesterday and the day before that and the day before. So somebody is just consistently like putting this on their playlist, and it's like
Have you drilled down, and because you can see that with analytics on Spotify, have you drilled down and wow, this person in Poland is obsessed with this fucking song? Is it something like that? Do you know where they are?
What? Okay, I didn't know I could do that. If I can drill down, I fucking will. No, I'm just kidding. I love that somebody is listening to it. And like I should like rephrase that. I don't have an issue with my catalog for
No.
what I've written. It's just the production. And it's just like you said, it's what's me and what isn't me. And I think that there is like the moving parts of like all of this whole thing that we're talking about is that point that we made, which is people are going to perceive you a certain way. Like some of my recordings don't feel me at all, and they aren't really me at all. And
but you also don't want to take them off or down, so it's a really weird thing,
I do,
right?
But I would
well, but you won't.
But I wouldn't, and I don't think I
okay.
should, and I don't think that my manager would let me. No, I'm just kidding. I think that it's more like there's something to somebody, and that matters to me too. And I think that you're always going to be more excited about the thing you're making now versus then. And if I'm having this conversation, it definitely gives people something to go listen to and figure out what the fuck I'm talking about.
There you go.
This body of work, especially. So the song was just one of those examples of what I was aiming to do, just got really like miscommunicated. And this is something I didn't mention before in the last chat, but ironically enough, and maybe it has nothing to do with it, maybe it has a lot to do with it, but this is a co-write. And that's something that I've also discovered with me a lot is like lately there is a different voice, I think. Well, there are multiple voices when it comes to me writing songs with other people versus when I'm just writing for myself and when I am just doing what I am doing.
Well, forgive me, correct me if I'm wrong. I don't think we've said the title.
No, we haven't.
Would you like to say the title?
Okay.
We're not at the end yet, but would you like to say the title?
Let's say the title. The title of the song is Jawbreaker, and it's
Jawbreaker
#2 on my goddamn Spotify. and I think I said this to you last, is that I it's the hardest thing because I don't have the tools to recreate this song live the way that it's recorded. So that's one like
right.
Then the other thing is that it doesn't really have that same identity that like the Nighttime did, like that record that I made. That I loved. It doesn't have that same sound or identity, and it's also it's an older track, and so why is it up there? But if somebody is coming to a live show, I do think if you're like me, I just go to Spotify or Apple and just like see what they sound like first. And for somebody to be scrolling up and finding whatever and that they're listening to that track, it's a little jarring for me to think about, because I'm like, that would be so confusing to me. Like, girl, so confusing. I just
it is confusing a little bit almost, because I want to keep stressing, like, I don't think it's a bad song. It's just not you at all. Like, if somebody hears you talking about how your influences are Smashing Pumpkins or White Stripes and then goes listen to that song, they're gonna be like, what the fuck?
Period.
You know what I mean? Like, it doesn't really sound that much like that.
Right. And it's perception.
It's all perception as well.
Yeah.
And you can see, because it obviously has a little bit more of a pop sheen on it, I would argue. You could see maybe that's also how you were sort of influenced a different way, maybe.
The struggle is I'm always going to love pop music. Like, I grew up on Britney Spears and Backstreet Boys just as much as I grew up on like Black Sabbath or like Aerosmith or like whatever, right? So classic rock, and then all the 2000s, like the stuff we talked about.
Yeah.
So I'm never like, and I never shade a different genre, but like I think we said too, it's like there was always a line in the sand where like pop to me and what my influences were like headsets, dancing, and rock was like, well, if you're up on stage and you're singing songs that you wrote, and if you're performing with guitar, and if you like whatever I'm doing, it just seems like that was that world, and that would be the obvious path. But for some reason, the path, it just got melded together with everything. Like, it was just that era where everything was going, and everybody thought it would be so fun and unique if I was doing pop in like the rocky world or like whatever. It was just there was like
Right.
an imbalance in the recipe, and I think that was the biggest
Yeah.
struggle. And there was other agendas I think in play, and miscommunication on my part. So there you go. And I love the song stripped back. That's the best. Is I can strip any of these songs back and play them acoustically, and it's like
Which
they're
is a good
still-
test.
Yeah, and they're still lovely, and it's cool, but it's just yeah, I don't have a real attachment to it or connection to it, and
I gotcha.
not gonna catch me fucking playing it. That's for sure.
Well, on that note, then, not gonna catch her fucking playing it, so you better listen to it.
Yeah,
Would
before it's gone.
Nat, would you like to officially introduce it? Remind us of
Alright.
your band name and so on.
All right. This is Loviet and Jawbreaker.
Take my daily dose, 20-ounce cup, 20 milligrams, never gonna be enough. On to the next thrill, feed the next rush, pedal on the gas, full bottle, pick me up. I'm always looking the more I look, not even sure what I'm looking for. Like a jawbreaker without a core, I'm hollow at the center, and I want some more. Wanna love like a drug so pure, I crave it more. At the end of the day, all I want is to be cared for. Days turn into weeks, years turn into life. The fall will kill you quicker if you don't aim high. So give me lightning bolts and give me butterflies. I wanna feel them swimming through my blood tonight. I'm always looking the more I look, not even sure what I'm looking for. Like a jawbreaker without a core, I'm hollow at the center, and I want some more. Wanna love like a drug so pure, I crave it more. At the end of the day, all I want is to be cared for. At the end of the day, all I want is to be cared for. 1, 2, 3, put my lips on us, make my sweet tooth so I could taste the colors. 1, 2, 3, strip another layer, take me back to before. I just want some more.